It's no coincidence that these three individuals are seated together on the same stage this evening. Let me just briefly explain why. Let's start off with Mr. Samuel Tsien in the middle from OCBC Bank. If you know OCBC, this is a legacy bank here in Singapore that has had 86 to 87 years of experience in banking. 86 years. That is a very long time to be successful doing what you're doing. And OCBC as well, being an incumbent bank, is moving possibly more than almost any other local bank, arguably. Anyone from DBS here will tell me no, it's not true. OCBC is pushing really hard into digital innovation, and in many ways, and I'm sure you've heard about some of those. Next to him, Robert Opp with the UNDP. UNDP has been transforming lives, and financial innovation has been part of that, and the work that you're dedicated to and what you believe in, that it can help to accelerate making people's lives better, has been so important. And last but not least, Sitoyo with Safaricom. Now, if you know anything about Safaricom, you know how far it has transformed the lives of millions of people, and in not a very long period of time. We want to know how you managed to do that. But first off, let me just say this. If you've been attending the conferences and all the meetings and you've seen the booths outside, you'll know that at least 30% of this conference has been dedicated to climate change and sustainability. And that's not a coincidence. It's the two things, financial innovation and climate change, are coinciding at a point of time for us that is critical. We're at an inflection point where these two things are converging. Hurtling into this digital future and facing we don't know what, and hurtling into a future of climate change. Again, what's on the other side? So without further ado, let me get down to my first question that we're going to open this panel with. The growth of Fintech, what we know of climate change, occupies headlines every day. They sort of challenge each other for headlines, in fact, in terms of how they impact our lives, how they transform our lives. So how do we ensure that this Fintech revolution is going to benefit the many and not just the some? Or has it left some behind already? Sitoyo, I would like you to kick us off with this.
I think, thanks for that. For us, Safaricom, first of all, we are a purpose-led organization, and our purpose is to transform lives. So that's the ethos of what we do. So first we look at the purpose, then does it impact the people or the community, and then we believe profits will come later. From a fintech perspective, there are certain areas that have really changed. One is, for example, customer acquisition. So from the traditional way of filling out forms and opening either mobile money account or a bank account is now digital. Today we have over 25 million bank accounts opened via the digital form. So we are seeing new models coming up. With regard to savings and lending credit propositions, we are able to enable customers save, as well as develop savings-led credit propositions that enable people actually get credit. We do lend about $15 million on a daily basis with an NPL of below 2%. Other areas we've seen new models is international money transfer and remittances, where we've managed to achieve the SDG goals on reducing inequality. That's SDG number 10. That remittances now in Kenya are at 2%, and the whole global average is about 10%. So we are seeing fintechs really on the fintech community helping transform lives. With M-Pesa, we are actually a very open platform. We've opened up the platform to over 200,000 businesses. We have open APIs in any time on a monthly basis. 16,000 developers are using our platform. So it's an exciting time in terms of the fintech and where it's going.
A very exciting time indeed. Samuel, I want you to weigh in on what it really takes to build this equitable financial future where everyone can feel a part of it.
Well, as Don, you mentioned, OCBC is the longest established bank in Singapore. When we were formed, the objective was basically to transform people's lives, to help people grow not only their businesses, but also to help people grow personally. So this has always been the guiding principle that OCBC has. Along the way, therefore, we will follow the trend, we will follow new inventions such as technology, and we will always deploy technology not only with an objective of profit-making in mind, with the objective of facilitating the people's ability to access something, access information, access knowledge, access resources, and access to advice. So this has been our guiding principle. So by making use of the availability of the data being digitalized, we help people to understand themselves better. We also help people to make use of those data better. We are always cognizant, however, that however advanced you are, you have to make sure that the community that you serve, the people there are not left behind. There are people who are technology savvy, there are people who are technology knowledgeable, there are people who are not savvy and not knowledgeable. It is this last group that we always bear in mind, that we should not exclude them, because if we exclude one sector, society will not be complete, and there will always be some backlash upon society. So along that line of philosophy that OCBC always adopts, we deploy technology to make sure that people are able to use whatever level of savviness and knowledge they are. And if they are not, we will try to make sure that we have an ability to reach out to them and teach them. An example, OCBC recently made a donation to NTUC First Campus bridging program, which is basically to help the children who do not have the ability, financial ability to go to school, or it will be too stressful on their family. So we made a donation to help these people to have access to the education with the government subsidy, that with the OCBC donation, everybody can be able to go to school, at least for the first 2 years of their life, free. But along with that, we add on to a program. The program that we add on to it is that every month we go to these schools to teach financial literacy, utilizing the more advanced technological approach towards banking to help the parents understand what does it mean for them. So that's an add-on, and we want to make sure that not only their children are educated, we want their parents, some of whom may not be as technology savvy and knowledgeable, to get onto the bank wagon as well. So this is how we approach it.
Let me ask the audience just a quick question. You don't even have to answer, you don't have to raise your hand. You just have to think about it in your mind. How many of you feel you have a moral responsibility when it comes to climate change and your daily activities, your spending habits, whether you buy something in single-use plastic, whether you bring a bag, whatever you happen to, whether you eat less meat? Maybe some of you thought, yes, I do have a moral responsibility. Maybe some of you said, no, I don't. When it comes to money, you have some, I have some, you have more than me, some people have less than all of us. What moral responsibility do we have when it comes to how we use financial innovation, what the legacy of financial innovation is going to be for those people who have less? And I want Robert to weigh in on that.
Well, I think that, well, first, actually, if I can, I'd like to comment a little bit on the first two trends that you mentioned, because then that'll get us into that. You called attention to the fact that there's these two trends that are affecting us. There's digital transformation, and then there's climate change. And that there's a kind of a digital divide developing as well, and that's the importance of including people. And that is really important, that we look at that digital divide and that we find ways to overcome the digital divide, I think through smart business models, looking at the role of government and all the stakeholders and kind of coming to new models of the way we can actually extend these kinds of services to people. And there's an interesting link actually between financial inclusion and climate change as well, in that people who do not have access to financial services by definition tend to be more vulnerable. And as climate change drives more extreme weather events and changes in context, these people can be extremely vulnerable to those shocks. And so financial inclusion becomes a really important part of resilience for communities and for people. So I think getting then to your question about the way that we use money, it is about, in I think parts of the world that are let's call it the developed world, the way that we use our money, the choices that we make as consumers, the impact that that has on environmental issues, a lot of those impacts are actually felt beyond the borders where we are. They're felt internationally by those people who are furthest behind. So it's, I think, in our interest as the United Nations and as a global community that we really look carefully at that global interconnectedness and understand that the choices we make definitely have an impact, and some of them are negative, of people around the world.
Sitoyo, on Robert's point there, in terms of access to finance and how it can transform lives, Safaricom M-Pesa has made a big, big difference. What's at the heart of the success that you've seen?
I think when you look at M-Pesa and what has made it successful, there are several factors. One is the deep passion and commitment as an organization that we have in transforming lives. The second bit is the investment that we put into it. So building the wide agent network. So we have over 175,000 agents. We have over 200,000 merchants. We're connected to all banks. We invest as a telco over $300 million a year in enhancing the network. The M-Pesa platform, we invest about $40 million in ensuring system stability, scalability, new innovations that happen. But most importantly is the focus on the customer. Everything is about what relevant products and services can we give the customers. To the point of leaving no one behind. Just as an example, there are 1.4 million visually impaired customers using M-Pesa. So how can we leverage on Fintech and new technologies to provide financial access to this? So we partnered with a South Korean company to launch the first dot braille watch. We are also investing in IVR for voice biometric to enable these customers access services. We have in Kenya about 1 million refugees based on the incidences in our neighboring countries. So how do we ensure refugees have access to financial services? Because if you follow the law, it needs KYC details. Refugees don't have it. So what we've developed is a unique system which is based on the same card. It's got a different profile. And today the World Food Programme can actually provide refugees with financial access. They can receive money on the phone, they can buy food, they can buy medicine, and it's a closed-loop system. So all these things are what make it successful. We never leave anyone behind. We invest heavily on financial education. So we use vernacular stations across the country. We use our agent network to educate customers. But it's easy for customers to easily be duped. We see scams happening, and we've invested in technologies that monitor fraud within the network and ensure that there's system security.
So just to put it into perspective, M-Pesa, the transactions, the volume of transactions on M-Pesa account for about 50% of GDP for Kenya, is that correct?
Yes, so M-Pesa today processes about 30 million transactions on a daily basis. We process about $10 billion worth of value on a monthly basis. And and in terms of the GDP, yes, it's well over 50%, yeah.
All right, so with all this money going around, and it is money, right? Although sometimes when you're in Singapore, if you're Singaporean and you hear the news, you hear, well, we're going to have a cashless future, right? No cash, no money, just digital numbers here and there. The fact is, people still trust cash. That's also in this part of the world, it's still important. But when it comes to this future of financial innovation, previously you'd think of competitors, right? OCBC, your competitor banks, we even use the word rival. Are we entering a future where that's going to go completely, and alliances and strong partnerships where your partners benefit as much as you do? Is that the future that we're heading towards? Samuel, I have to ask you that question.
I think our objective is to make whatever we do more productive, more efficient. And the time and resources that becomes available after that, we can devote it to some other more productive purposes. So cash, the objective is not to remove cash, but the objective is to make our payment system more efficient. And as a result of that, cash becomes unnecessary as a tool for us to make the transaction complete. So I think that was the objective. The objective was not we hate cash. The objective was that we can make more productive use of our time and efficient in order to do that. So deploying Fintech is trying to make all our efforts more productive. And the resources available, you devote it to something else. So one point that I don't know whether the audience knows is that every bank has to be engaged in what we call KYC. I see Sitoyo mentioned KYC. And every bank does the KYC on each individual customer, and each individual customer are also customers of other banks. And other banks do the KYC, go through the same procedure on that same customer. So what Singapore is doing, industry-led, working with the government, with the Monetary Authority of Singapore also taking a lead in that, is that can we create a utility so that we can perform KYC once, particularly starting with the commercial entities, because where they were incorporated, when they were incorporated, who are the directors. These are things which are fact. And we are working together to try to deliver something which is good for the industry, but ultimately the corporations can save a lot of resources in devoting it to other more productive uses. And we are working on that. So that's an example of how we make use of technology to devote it to an area that there's duplication of effort, and we try to work on that. And we hope that we'll be able to, something that's announceable by the middle of next year.
Come to me first. I'll do an exclusive. Robert, give me your experience on working with stakeholders to use innovative tools to really solve people's problems.
I mean, I think the key is actually already in what Sitoyo and Samuel have spoken about. The key is to focus on the needs of individuals, the challenges that they have. So the use of any kind of technology, whether it's leveraging M-Pesa for the World Food Programme's payment to refugees in Kenya, or whether it's developing a blockchain system to have transparent aid transfers to refugees in Jordan, or remittances in Serbia, or cash cards in Philippines. These are all about using new innovative approaches to address those problems at hand. And it's all about what Samuel said, which is access, so that people have more access to those much needed services, so they can build their resilience, build their livelihoods. And it's about the choice as well. So beyond what we've been discussing now, it's also about thinking, how do people make payments to government? How do governments make payments to people? How do you create the whole ecosystem that gives more choice and more efficient and effective ways of people interacting in the financial system?
While you've been talking, I've been thinking about the fact that everyone has a financial goal, right? Everybody here. You all earn, maybe you have a salary, maybe you have investments and so on. All of us have that very, very close relationship with what we earn and how we use our money. And that sounds almost chemical, The fact is, life, it can be the difference between life and death. So maybe you're lucky, maybe you have a bank account, maybe you're doing okay. Remember a time, and I discussed this with a gentleman before we came on stage, remember a time when you wondered, when you bought a wallet and you were like, does it have enough spaces for all the different credit cards that I'm going to have? And somebody would have like a long list of credit cards, and like, wow, look how many credit cards he has. And today that's changed. It's changed so much, and it's going to change even more in the future. And remember when it came to financial money management, well, I don't know what school you went to, but probably you weren't taught how to budget your money and so on, right? But I always remember that financial literacy and understanding what you could and couldn't spend had to do with, and if you had trouble with it, you were advised, cut up your credit cards and use cash, right? Because as humans, we have a propensity to basically be more prudent if we see the cash going out of our hand. If I have to actually hand you the $100, I'm less likely to do it. I'll think a bit more than if I'm just swiping the card or pressing a button. But hey, we're in the digital era. We're being told cashless. We're being told, yeah, just process it online.